What exactly is toxic about our culture? Is that a too big a question?
No, it's the central question.
Yeah.
Um, if you imagine you're a microbiologist in a laboratory growing microorganisms in a petri dish, that's called a culture. You know, you put in a brew, and with the right nutrients, and the microorganisms thrive and they multiply. But if a lot of them start getting sick, and a lot of them start dying, you'd say this is a toxic culture. Now, if you look at what's happening in North America now, there's an article in the New York Times 10 days before we speak of a teenager being on 10 different psychiatric medications. 10 different psychiatric medications. More and more kids are being diagnosed with ADHD, with anxiety, with depression. The rate of childhood suicide is going up, and everybody's saying, what's going on here? Why is this going on? More and more people getting autoimmune disease, mental health issues. The overdose crisis in the States, over 100,000 people died of overdoses. Either we assume that these are all accidents and sort of blows of misfortune, or we get that there's something about this culture that's fomenting so much illness. 70% of American adults are on at least one medication.
70.
70, yeah. 40% are on about two at least. That's a toxic culture. There's all kinds of. Now I could talk about what makes it that way, but when I talk about toxic culture, I'm talking about its impact on the people who inhabit it.
So this toxic culture, are you just talking about the overall way human beings communicate? Is it the way we're being raised? Is it the foods we eat? Is it everything?
It's all done.
It's all.
And salient amongst them, how we raise our kids.
What about how we raise our kids?
Well, if you look at how human beings evolved over millions, really, of years and hundreds of thousands of years, and even our own species has been on the earth for about 150, 200,000 years. For all that time, until the blink of an eye ago, we lived out in nature in small band hunter-gatherer groups where kids were raised communally. So that it wasn't just an isolated nuclear family or an isolated mother or father. It was grandparents and uncles and aunts and the whole community. It takes a village, as the saying goes. It takes a whole community. Now, children also were picked up when they cried. In fact, they were never even put down. They slept with their parents. They were breastfed for 3 or 4 years. In today's society, and I can start even before that, already we know that stresses on the pregnant women have a negative impact on the infant, physiological impact on the infant's brain development. I mean, it's not even controversial. In our society, we don't pay attention to women's emotional needs when they're pregnant, and we don't pay attention to the child's emotional needs. So the child needs to be held and accepted unconditionally. Now, in our society, we actually tell parents not to pick up their kids when they're crying.
Yeah.
And that is an insult and a trauma to the child. And that has an impact on the child's trust in the world, sense of safety, sense of belonging, how they feel about themselves. You know, in the book I talk about my mom, and I talk about my own infancy in Budapest, Hungary, as a Jewish infant under the Nazis. So you can imagine how stressed my mom was. But forget the Nazis for a minute. I read her diary, and she writes, this is when I'm 2 weeks of age, and we're in the maternity hospital. And she says, my poor little Gabor, my heart is breaking for you because you want to be fed and you're hungry, but I promised the doctor I would only feed you every 4 hours. And you've been crying for the last hour and a half. What's it like for an infant to lie there next to their mom and not be picked up and fed for an hour and a half? Now try telling a mother baboon or a mother cat or a mother bear to ignore their child's distress for an hour and a half. So the very advice that we give to a lot of parents these days already damages the child.
Where's that advice coming from? Like, who are the experts that thought it was a good idea to not pick up children when they're crying?
It's been going on for about 100 years, maybe even longer. Dr. Spock, I don't know if you remember the name Benjamin Spock. His book was just the most influential parenting Bible for decades, to the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And he talked about the tyranny of the baby. He wants to be picked up. He says, well, how you deal with that is you walk out and you shut the door and you don't go back. In other words, you isolate the infant. Now, look at how hunter-gatherers raise their children. They carry their babies everywhere. I met a Cree woman once who told me in our community, kids weren't even allowed to touch the ground for 2 years. They were just held all the time. So it's modern life. It's the pressure and stresses of modern life acting on parents that makes it so difficult for them to really be there for the kids. Now, my mother's heart was breaking. She went against her own instincts to follow the doctor's advice. Again, you tell a mother rat or a mother baboon to ignore the baby's cries, and you find out what mother rage is all about.
And what does this effect of not holding babies and not comforting them when they cry, what does this have on the child?
Well, let's say you're my friend, okay? And you come to me for help as an adult, and I ignore you. What's the impact on you? What are you going to believe?
I don't know. I mean, if you ignore me, I'm gonna take into account what the rest of the world says.
You might, but what would you believe about my attitude towards you?
I would think you're ambivalent.
Yeah, and I
They
don't
don't
care.
care.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly the impact on the child. Not consciously, but unconsciously, the child makes the assumption that there's something wrong with me. I'm not lovable. The world is an unsafe place, because we learn about our worlds through how we interact with our caregivers. That's the template. I mean, if you ever raised a puppy dog, you know that how you treat that little infant animal has a huge impact on what kind of a creature they're going to develop into. Well, human beings are the same. In fact, even more so, because we're more dependent and more helpless than the average animal is. So we need that care and that connection even more powerfully. So when we're lacking it, the infant assumes unconsciously that there's something wrong with them, they're not lovable, the world is not a trusting place. Then we spend our lives acting out from that unconscious belief.
So the majority or a large portion of our culture develops as a child with this problem.
In this world, yes. In this world, very much so. Then there is like if you look at what a psychologist friend of mine calls the irreducible needs of children. Irreducible meaning that if you don't meet these needs, there's going to be negative consequences. The first one is unconditional loving acceptance. Just a sense of belonging, attachment, it's called. Connection. The infant needs that. You know how baby elephant is born? When the mother elephant goes into labor, all the mother elephants stand around in a circle. When the infant plops on the ground, they all reach out their trunks and they stroke the infant. That's natural instinct. You belong to us. You're welcome here. Now, the human infant needs that at least as much as the baby elephant. Now, so the first need is this unconditional loving welcome in the world. The second need of the child is that the child shouldn't have to work to be loved, to be accepted. I shouldn't have to be pretty, smart, successful, compliant, good, nice, anything. I shouldn't have to work for what is my birthright, which is to be accepted as a person with value and worth and lovable in their own rights. That's the second need. And the third need is the freedom to experience all our emotions. And successful and self-actualized,